let this happen to you, call the guys at Troy's Roofing to get the job done right the first time. You see, Troy's Roofing has been doing this throughout New Brunswick for over 20 years. That's why they do a better job at a more competitive price than most of the other guys. Plus, they're on site within 24 hours of your call to provide a free estimate on peaked and flat roofs. And now they can reach even greater heights. Oh, and one more thing, don't do this yourself. Call the professionals at Troy's Roofing, because after all,
we do it right the first time.
And cut.
Hi everyone, welcome to Before the Bell, presented by Troy's Roofing and Construction in partnership with Sports Combat News. My name is Brian Ouellette and I am your host. And today on the show, we have an undefeated professional fighter who is also the Elite One MMA Middleweight champion. Please welcome to the show, Christien Savoie. Christien, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
So, Christien, you have an upcoming fight on January 26th at the casino here in Moncton, New Brunswick, where you will face off against Aldrich Keith for the vacant welterweight championship on that Elite One MMA Bitter Rivals card. Before we talk about Aldrich and what that looks like for you, I'm just wondering a few things about you taking that jump down to welterweight. You are already the middleweight champion, and now you're going to welterweight. What made that decision for you, obviously, other than going for a title? But is this something that you've been trying to do for a while?
It's funny, man. So what ultimately made me make the decision was I did a body fat test. And I was at 16%, and which is relatively high for peaking performance professional athlete. So it was just a realization that I was pretty much just a fat middleweight. And honestly, the Nick Nacarado fight really prompted me to go down, simply because I don't feel guys could eat the shots that he ate. And don't get me wrong, that dude has a big head, but it's more so to protect my hands.
So it's interesting that you brought up that Nick fight. Let's talk about that a little bit, because you were supposed to face Julien LeBlanc in that fight, and then he got injured, backed out, and you took that Nick Nacarado fight on short notice. Like, how does that affect you as a fighter, right? You were prepping for Julien. How does that change your game plan, if any, going into a short notice fight like that?
It was huge, man, and it was a big realization for me, because I was training for a 6'3" southpaw, a completely different style fighter, and like all my culminations and everything that I was planning to do was pretty much thrown out the window, So it's a disadvantage for him, being that he's not peaking for a fight, but it's a massive disadvantage for me, being that I was training for like a completely different fight, So it really gave me a different perspective, and it's going to change the way I train, just in case something like this ever happens again.
And that's interesting that you even accepted that fight on short notice. Did it cross your mind to say, I'm done, I don't want to switch opponents? You seem to be that kind of guy who just wants to get in the octagon and fight. But on short notice, like you said, knowing that does affect your game plan, did that worry you at all?
Of course it worried me, I'm not going to sit here and lie, but, I think, I'm a fucking warrior, man, that's all it is, when Chris Lee missed weight against Aldrich, I said I would take that fight, when Aldrich wouldn't, when Chris Lee weighed 20 pounds overweight, so, I'm a fighter, and, I want to be there for the fans too, they pay good money to be there, and I don't want to disappoint anybody. And unfortunately, I got screwed over in a couple fights, and I took some risky fights, and I came out on top. And I'm looking forward to January.
And we talk about taking those fights on short notice. And before you fought Nick, you fought Chris Lee, who was overweight for your fight as well, for that vacant middleweight title, and you accepted that fight too. So, you literally are the people's champion when you think about it, because you want to put that fight in the octagon at any cost. And you mentioned a little bit about offering to fight Chris Lee instead of Aldrich fighting Chris Lee when he was overweight. So what went down there? How does that work? Are you able to switch opponents last minute like that, or was that kind of what put the stop to it?
Yeah. So with that whole situation, Chris Lee missed. So I was supposed to fight James Kwame that night,
Right.
or the night after, right? And Aldrich was supposed to fight Chris Lee. And Chris Lee missed weight by 20 pounds, and Aldrich didn't want to take the fight. And I just said, I called Mike Williams and I said, listen, ask Aldrich if he'll fight Kwame, and I'll fight Chris Lee. Fuck it, I'll save the show, you know. And I guess, I don't know, they couldn't make that happen, but I was more than willing to do it. And even when Chris Lee missed weight against me, the commission wasn't going to allow that fight, man. I called Lied and Mike, and I just begged them, like, please let it happen. Like, it just, like, you know, we're already here, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm just ready to go, you know.
You know, and that Chris Lee.
Like I said, like people pay money to see these fights, man. Like, you know, I just want to I want to entertain, and I want to be there for the people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I've seen you fight quite often, and you know, you do put on the show for the people. And let's talk about that Chris Lee fight. You know, it is quite far back, but that was in your hometown in St. John. What did that feel like, fighting, you know, for the belt in your hometown? You know, even if he was overweight, that didn't matter. But what was going through your mind knowing you were fighting, you know, in your hometown?
Oh man, first of all, I know you were there. That crowd was insane. And yeah, man, that was literally like a dream come true to me. And you know, the fight couldn't have gone any better, really. And yeah, no, it's crazy, man. Like, I had like older gentlemen messaging me after that fight saying they've been going to the LBR for events for the past 50 years, and they've never seen a crowd like that, you know. So it really was. It meant a lot to me, man. It was. It's a night I'll never forget. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it was an awesome night. The fans were into it, and you put on a great performance as well. So let's talk about Aldrich. You know, we mentioned that on that card with Chris Lee and Kwame that you were willing to make that switch. Now you face off against Aldrich on January 26th for that vacant welterweight title. And there seems to be, you know, I'm not going to call it bad blood. Let's call it a bit of rivalry, if you will.
Oh yeah, the rival's nicer, I guess.
Yeah, but in all honesty, you know, I've been following you guys on social media, and there's a lot of, you know, those memes are coming out, which I have to say are hilarious, by the way. So what is it? What is it that makes this fight different than all the other ones? You know, it seems almost more personal than before. So what is it that makes this Aldrich Keith fight a little bit more different?
You know, he's just he ran his mouth a lot, and you know, that's just it, man. I just think he's a fake individual, and you know, he's trying to make me look like the bad guy in this entire thing. And I've said everything I gotta say. These guys will try to find a way to manipulate everything I say to try to make them look like the good guy. But anybody who knows me, man, knows what kind of guy I am, and I'm just excited to fight, man. I'm just excited to fight. For sure, this one's a little more personal, and in a sense, I gotta thank Aldrich. I gotta thank, you know, I gotta thank Adam Hunter for his stupid fucking videos. I gotta thank everybody talking shit online, because you're gonna bring the animal out of me, man. And I can't wait till that moment where we're locked in the cage, and I'm looking at him in the eyes, and it's just him and I in there, and he recognizes that this is real now. So I'm excited for January 26th.
Yeah, and I'm equally as excited. You know, I've watched you fight a lot, and your fights are always entertaining. You lay it all on the line, and I can only imagine what it's going to look like on January 26th here at the casino when you face Aldrich for that vacant welterweight title. So moving to welterweight, like, is this your plan moving forward to stay at welterweight division?
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, I feel so much better right now that I'm walking around lighter. Like I said, I've never had a real weight cutting guy. You know, a lot of these guys have like weight cutting experts. I never had that. I take pride. I always eat clean. Like, I just enjoy living a healthy lifestyle. But I used to eat a lot, man. I didn't know anything about portion control or any of that shit. So I feel so much better walking around the weight I'm at now. I feel so much more athletic. I'm just as strong, and you know, this for sure is going to be my weight class.
So what does weight cut look like for you now then? You know, at welterweight, you walk around a lot slimmer, you know, eating healthy, obviously. So is there much of weight cut? Like, what do you walk around at now?
I'll keep that to myself. But I'm a big welterweight. There's no denying it, right? But so I'm gonna announce it right here, and I'm gonna give my boy Eric Pino a shout out, who works for George Lockhart, who's one of the best weight cutting guys in MMA. I want to thank my manager David Arvello for getting me in touch with him. And for those who don't know George Lockhart, he's recognized as probably the best weight cutting guy in MMA. And Eric Pino, who's one of his guys, is going to be working with me ahead of this fight. So I'm going to make weight, no problem. I imagine by the time I step in the cage, I'll probably be a lean, sexy 190.
Oh, that's awesome. And thanks for sharing that. I know, sometimes, when it comes to training camp and things like that, it can be a bit secret. Where do you spend most of your training now? And is your gym still MXT Fight Academy?
Yeah, so I travel at several gyms. The thing is, I train out of a small town, right, St. John.
Yeah.
And it's there's advantages and disadvantages to that. But because I train in a small town, there's no one-stop shop, So I go to MXT to work my jiu-jitsu primarily. John is also a 6th-degree black belt in Taekwondo, so he helps me with my kicks and striking as well. But I also work with Chris Peters at East Coast Boxing, who's obviously my boxing coach. Excuse me. I work with my wrestling coach, Clint Kingsbury, who's up in Fredericton. Sometimes he comes and sees me. I go and see him at Evolution Fight Club. Shout out to Andy Young and Evolution Fight Club as well. And my longtime strength conditioning coach is Matt Forgey at For Fitness and Athletics.
That's awesome. And it seems like you have a well-rounded training camp and a well-rounded training game as well. And I say you see it when you step into the octagon that you have this well-rounded game that gives you all kinds of opportunities. So I'm going to ask this question. What really got you into mixed martial arts? What made you want to become an MMA fighter?
So I started Taekwondo when I was 6. I did that till I was about 13. And I competed in nationals and stuff like that, but I never ranked. And once I turned I don't know, like 12 or something, I really started to lose interest. And, I didn't take it that serious. And I remember I saw my very first MMA fight, man. I tell this story all the time. It was Carlos Newton against Matt Hughes, the second fight, I believe. And it's when Matt Hughes slammed Carlos Newton and knocked him out cold. And me, as like a 13-year-old kid or whatever I was just starstruck. And I just thought, yeah, that's the coolest shit I've ever seen in my life. And it's probably going to ruin my life. And I'm about to do that forever. And I joined MMA shortly after at a gym called Oakland Fight Club under Britt Nickerson when I was about 14, 15.
So I'm going to jump back and forth here a little bit because I just realized there was a question I wanted to ask you about that Nick Nacarado fight that I didn't ask. You said you injured your hand, was it, during that fight?
Yes.
And how is that? And again, it's up to you to tell me or not, but how is the hand doing? Was it broken or was it just sprained?
My hand was broken, yeah, but it's good now. It's 100%. That was in April. From what I gathered, it was a bad break, but it was in a good area.
All right.
So, meaning it would heal well, and it did heal well. Yeah, and I'm really fortunate too, man. I got a great team around me. Matt Ford, my strength conditioning coach, is also a chiropractor. I have 2 massage therapists, Jill Calder at Meraki and Josh Fry at New Brunswick Sports Massage. So I got a great team around me, man, and we take care of injuries well.
Well, I think that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that you are healthy because I think, that's sometimes the biggest fear is somebody gets injured and then how do you recover? And I'm glad to hear that, you've recovered well and you're ready to get back at it. So another question for you, Christian, is what, everyone talks about going to the big times, right? Making it to the big show. Is that something that you're looking forward to? Have they come calling yet to have you part of their cards?
Well, a lot of people are aware, I did get offered a short notice fight in the UFC one time against Julian Marquez. It was a 2 week notice fight, not even, I don't think. And me and my coaches decided that it doesn't make sense. And also, I got offered a fight on Contender Series at 205, which, I'm definitely not big 205, but that's when I broke my hand, so I couldn't take that fight anyways. But I'm a true believer, man, that timing is everything, and especially in this sport, like you see guys. The biggest thing I've learned through watching friends of mine go into the UFC who might not have been ready at the time is that, you've got to be so calculated in this sport, man, because this isn't, I always tell people this isn't fucking ping pong, like we're trying to biff shins off heads, and you can only take so many shots to the head. So, I've always said, and all my friends and family can quote this, that I always wanted to be in the UFC in my late 20s, and I'm 26 now, and I'm getting there. And whether it happens after this fight, whether it happens, 2-3 fights from now, I'm not majorly concerned about it. But I'm ready, man. I'm ready when that phone call comes.
Yeah, and it sounds, like they're already knocking at the door and they've got you on the radar. And I think you're right. It's about timing. You don't want to take a fight short notice and that ruins your opportunities and things like that. And it's always about, the fighter being ready for that next step, moving on to the big show.
And, I think it's a confidence thing, man. Like, a lot of people, Aldrich said some stupid comment about, like if I want to be in the UFC so bad, why didn't I jump at it? And it's a confidence thing, man. I'm confident that I'm gonna get there anyways, and I'm gonna get there on better terms, And I don't believe that taking really like short notice kind of stupid fights is the best idea.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. When the time comes and you're ready physically, mentally, that'll be the right time for you, which I think is awesome. So, Christien, I thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any sponsors that you want to do a shout out to, or is there anything else you want to add before we take off?
Yeah, I'd like to give my sponsors a shout out, man, if you give me a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got them on a banner over here, so. First of all, these are sponsors. Some are still active, some are old, but I want to give them a shout out anyways. First of all, I want to give a shout out to my gyms, East Coast Boxing, MXT, for Fitness and Athletics, and Clint. I know you don't got a gym, but Clint Kingsbury. I want to give a shout out to Made in Heaven Cleaning, my boy Greg Knudsen, who does my photography and videography, or whatever the hell the word is. I'm a fighter. Marijuana for Trauma, Agua Pure, Maritime Cuts, Collins Tours, Rocky Sports Bar, Churchill's, Cask and Kettle, Meraki, Northern Sword, C&R Landscaping, Nourish MB, and anybody I forget, I'm sorry. But you guys know I appreciate it so much, and I love you all.
Well, thanks for making that shout out, Christien. And I'm sure they appreciate too, great athlete as you are, representing them well. So once again, Christien, I want to thank you for joining us on the show and taking time out of your training camp to answer some of our questions. And if everyone hasn't already guessed it, this fight on January 26th for that Elite One MMA Bitter Rivals card is going to blow the roof off of the casino for that welterweight, vacant welterweight title. So don't forget to buy your tickets today for that January 26th card at Casino New Brunswick here in Moncton to watch Christien Savoie in action. Christien, once again, thank you so much for taking part. And we want to thank Troy's Roofing and Construction for sponsoring today's video. The customer comes first and they do the job right the first time. Contact Troy at 506-693-TROY. Christien, once again, we thank you and I look forward to seeing you in the Octagon on January 26th.
Thank you, sir. And the casino's roof is going to get blown off, and so is Aldrich's head. Thank you.